Alright people, this is the second part of the throttle shaft seal replacement. I received my throttle shaft seals. That's the part number, that's the Mikuni part number on it. So that's the 36325 BDC. And I got 4 of them, which is 2 on this one, 2 on that one, so pretty straightforward. Additionally to what we done the last time, I cleaned up a few of my bits, like the throttle plates, the bracket on the side, the choke linkage. Obviously I couldn't refresh the coating on them, the zinc coating, but I just tried to clean them up as much as I could. The other thing I did was the removal of the caps and the slides, because when we put the little butterflies back, we will have to check if they seal properly, and it is much easier if you do it with the light method, which means that you put a light behind it and then you can see if the butterfly plate closes this orifice up perfectly. Obviously there will be a little bit of a play when you put this in there, in the shaft I mean, and we have to make sure it's perfectly centered. And the easiest way to check is when you put it against light. Now to demonstrate this thing, I just can't hold it up against the sky, holding up to the sun, so I'm going to use a different thing that you don't have to replicate at home, but it is something that you can do in case you want to. Anyway, we are going to do that too, just to make sure everything's fine. So yeah, we need to lubricate these surfaces. For that I'm going to use a little bit of moly grease, just on this surface, like that. So yeah, we're going to lube the bushes in the car body. I use one of these little Q-tips to do that. Just to smear some grease there, and some on the shaft. And then the shaft might be pushed back in place, but first of course we need to put in the shaft seal. But the point is that the shaft is ready. So I'll take these out and I'm going to pop them in my little tub of rubber grease, which is right here. I smear some rubber grease on it, both sides. Rubber grease is important because it protects the rubber. It lubricates, so it goes in its little orifice much easier without ripping or tearing. And this is not like ordinary grease, which is mineral oil based. Usually rubber greases are vegetable oil based, so they don't tend to attack rubber components and parts and whatnot. So here we go, all rubber greased up. So I'm going to pop this in there. Yeah, this is a really snug fitting shaft seal. The other one just came out like it was nothing. So the old one I mean, right? So that side is in. I'll pop this side in as well. Here's one I greased up, and this is fairly deep down there, so I try to be gentle. I don't want to use anything sharp like a screwdriver. I try to pop them down using my fingers. There. So this one is sorted. Let's do the other one as well while we're at it. So rubber grease on this one, some rubber grease on the other. And I'm not sure if you can tell at this stage. Now that's quite distorted. Let's put that one next to it. That might look a little bit better. Come on, focus. I'm not sure if you can tell the difference, but this one, right? Yeah, that one has a much thinner inner lip because it's worn. This one, well, you can see the difference. This one is much thicker all around. So rubber grease, and there we go. Yeah, that's a really snug fit. Okay, so all of these shaft seals are in place. Okay, this one too. Right, first of all I'm going to assemble the front carburetor. I think that's the one that's on the right when you look at it, if you were sitting on the bike. Now we're going to need its little nylon washer, or this kitty. I'm going to put a little bit of grease on that one too, like that, and I'm going to pop it through nicely. Yeah, this is snug, which is nice. That's how we like it. That's how we know that it's gonna seal up really well. There we go. Yeah, perfect. Okay. So basically the little knob has to face forward. That's the correct orientation, and as you can see, that corresponds with the countersink, as you can tell over there. And like I said, this one has no retention, so I'm going to take one of these throttle plates and push it in there, and I try to find the right position for it. You know, there's grease on my fingers. That doesn't make things any easier. So yeah, the other thing is the number over there. Can you see it? At 90 with the Mikuni symbol. That has to be facing up. That's the original factory orientation. So here we go. The throttle plate is in place. I'm going to zoom in so you can see what I'm talking about. So hope you can see the little screw holes. They are not perfectly aligned, I think you can tell. So I'm going to make a little rough adjustment with a screwdriver if I can. Maybe not this one. Yep, like so. And then we are going to do that light test I mentioned. So the light test in my case involves a piece of paper, an LED light behind it, and the carburetor itself. And what I'm looking for is a ring of light around the butterfly plate. So I'm going to turn my little lights off, and hopefully we can tell the difference. As you can see, there's a circle of light which shuts off nicely. If I turn this light off as well, it's much better. See what I mean? Like so. And in this position we are going to pop these little screws in, but before I do that, I'm going to turn the lights on again so I can see what I'm doing. Alright, the lights are back on, and the throttle plate is in place. Now, to make sure that the little screws won't rattle out, we need to clean the threads before we apply our Loctite, or what do you call it? Thread locker. That's the one. That's the word I was looking for. Before we apply our thread locker compound, I'm going to need 2 of these screws as well. Like that. And I'm going to use a little bit of carb or brake cleaner, whichever you prefer or whichever you have at hand. Just like that. There we go. And we are going to need our size 2 JIS screwdriver. Okay, that's good. I'm going to blow these little screw holes to make sure they are dry. So there we go. Now the threads are clean, so we need to apply some of this thread locker. Come on. A little bit on the tip of a screw. It doesn't need much because it is a fairly small fastener. I'm not sure if it's visible, but not on the tip. Come on. There we go. That's good enough. And now I'm going to put the screw in. Not super tight, just tight enough for now. Like that, for starters, because I'm going to confirm its position in a second. Make sure that the throttle plate didn't move. So here's the second one. Okay, just tight enough. And I'm not going to set up the paper thing again, so give me a second. I just hold it against the window, and yes, this is in place, so we can tighten those screws down. Yeah, all it needs is a quarter ton more. Obviously don't want to mess up the threads. There we are. So this butterfly is good to go. The other thing we need to do is put the TPS rubber jobby in there, and it also has this little washer or bushing, or not really sure what that is, but I'm going to put that in. And since this TPS thingy is also a rubber bit, I'm going to apply some rubber grease on that one too, to make sure the rubber is well moisturized and it won't tear and get scratched and things like that. Obviously I messed it up. Let's pop it out again. There we go. Come on, focus. So, right, the seal for the throttle position sensor is in place. Now we can take this aluminium piece and slide it down the shaft. Come on. There we go. Yep, and it's down where it's supposed to be. I'm going to zoom in for you so you can see what I'm doing. So there is the assembly that we wanted to focus on. And if I turn the butterfly, it works beautifully. There's a smear of thread locker, but I'm going to wipe it off anyway before we proceed. So one carb is nearly finished. Let's see the other side. Yep, I wipe the excess off, and there we are. So now these are all threaded in, screwed in, and they're also secured with some thread locker. So this is good to go. I put this to one side, and I'm going to continue with the second one, which is very similar to the first one, or similar to the other carb, but of course with this one you have this spring with the throttle cam and whatnot. But before I put the spring on, we need to put this one on, this little plastic spacer or spring guide, whichever way you want to call it. So there it is, with a bit of grease on that one too. So let's hook this thing on, and I'm going to zoom out a little bit if I can. So here we are. One end goes to the hook, and there's that little tab, and this one is going to sit here. So let's try putting this together. Okay, a little bit back because the spring is too far out. It should be in there. There we go. That it's the proper orientation or proper place. I'm not sure how to express myself, but yeah. No, come on, lights on. So this thingy goes in. Yeah, here we are, and I'm going to give it a little bit of preload because that is its original position, like so, with the countersink facing up, and that's where the throttle plate is going to slip in. Take my butterfly plate and slide it in there. Now, as you can see, this one is not aligned properly, so I'm going to mess about with it just a little bit until it finds its place. Okay, this one needs to go up a tiny bit, this one needs to come down a little bit, so we're nearly there. Okay, it looks alright at the moment, but I'm going to do the light test once again, which I'm not going to demonstrate again. I think you get the idea anyway. So I just rinse the grease off to make sure those screws will be glued properly to the throttle shaft, so the threads are not greasy and the adhesion between the threads is sufficient. So I'll grab two little screws. Oh, come on, you're tiny. There we go. There's the second one. I'm going to give them a wash with the brake parts cleaner, and before I tighten them down, I'm going to check them against the window. Like I said, that LED light with the paper on top of it was just for demonstration, so you can see why it's a good idea to check against a light source, whichever light source you choose, of course. Come on. No, this doesn't seem to get its threads. Let's try the other one. Yeah, this one seems to fit in this thread much better, so it's probably that socket is its original place, and I'm going to apply some thread locker on the other one. Here we go. The blue goo on the tip, and yeah, that's going in nicely. So like I said, I'm not going to tighten down completely. I still have a few minutes before the thread locker gets hard anyway. So I'm going to hold it against the window, check if I can see the circle of light, which I can't, so it's all good. I tighten down the screws, screw them in all the way, no need for any adjustment. There we go. And I'm going to wipe the excess off. This side and that side. Okay, now these things are nice and secure, so both butterflies are fitted, and now we can assemble this side of the throttle linkage. Now the order of the parts is the following. What the heck is that? So first of all, we need this plastic washer thingy that goes in there. Then comes the cam. Just like with the other one. Where is it? So just like with the other one, the knob on it faces forward. I'm not sure if you can see it. See? It's pointing towards you on both. So that's the position it has to be in. Right, so the little connecting tab is on. Here is the spring washer, and here comes the nut. The nut that I mentioned earlier, that this can be a bear. Oh yeah, okay, it's on. So now we have to tighten it down, and like I mentioned the last time, because of its silly nature, it can get really tight on its own, and when you try to take it off, you can actually twist the throttle shaft if you're not careful. Now obviously, when you need to assemble using one of these electrical impact screwdrivers, might be handy. So I'm going to do the same thing. There we go. And just to make sure it's secure, I'm going to give it a couple ugga-duggas, as the bearded mechanic says, or calls these. There we go. And this is nice and tight, and as you can see, the spring washer deformed, and yeah, this is secure now. This is absolutely secure now. Right, so our carburetors are back together, at least mostly. We are going to assemble the pair, or marry the two halves, the front to the rear, so to speak. And like I said, the little nubs has to face forward on both, and as you can see, the tab on this carb is towards the back of the carb, like so, and the position corresponds on this one too. Now it is going to be very difficult to put the spring and the little tab back together like that while the carburetors are like this, are in this situation, or the butterflies. So the easiest thing we can do is lock this bugger in this position, because then we have more room to work with. So I'm going to get something that I can shove in here. That's some plastic thingy. Yep, that seems to be okay. And now this one has no spring on it, so we can just twist that fucker, and that's how I'm going to put them together, by wedging the spring-loaded one open. And I'm going to just pull the spring back and slide the tab in here between the spring and the adjusted bit, that part. But before I do that, we need to put other bits back in place. One is the breather, which is already there. I'm just going to apply a little bit of grease to the other side so it slips in a bit easier. And the other thing we need to put in is the joint between the two fuel inlets, because of course this one gets the fuel in on this side and passes on some fuel through that channel into this channel on the other carburetor. So we need to put this in. Now while these are apart, it's a good idea to replace these seals too. The inner diameter is 6 millimeters and the thickness of the factory o-ring is 1.9 millimeters. These are 6 millimeters by 2 millimeters, so these are a little bit thicker, which means they will be a bit more snug, shall we say. So I need to lube them up a little bit to make sure they slip in. There we go, and I push them together. So now the fuel joint o-rings, or we usually call them the fuel bridge, because they bridge the two carbs together, of course. Now, so those o-rings are replaced, and now we have to make sure that the spring goes back where it belongs. Well, not the spring, sorry. It's the little thingy between the springs. I'm not sure if you can see what I'm doing. I try to zoom in, but hopefully you will be able to see. So now I need to push the two carbs together in a way that this tab slips between that screw and that tab on the other side, which is adjusted with the sync adjustment screw. Yeah. First of all, I need to compress the spring a tiny bit. You can make your life much easier if you unscrew the adjustment screw. So if you retract that one, because then this spring will be fairly loose, so it will be easier to join these two bits. But with the camera in my face, I struggle, I have to admit. It's not simple, but I try anyway. So yeah, we're going to retract the spring, pop the tab in there like so. Yeah, we're halfway there, and then we're going to push the two curves together while looking at these little positioning jobbies all around the carburetors. And now, come on, zoom out, and now we're back together. As you can see, that positioning thingy, there's a little pin on this side and a socket on the other side. Those are fitted together. These are fitted together, and now that synchronizing jobby is almost perfect. We just need to push the spring back to the center. Here we are. And of course we are going to need to adjust the sync, but let's do that later. For now, I'm happy with what we achieved, and this is the right time to put the brackets and the bolts on the assembly that can hold everything together for us. So first of all, I'm going to put the bottom one in, because that does not have a washer, and that is the shorter one, because you remember, and I hope you remember, we have two of these, and the slightly longer one goes on the top, because that also has a nut on one end. The bottom one has no nut. It has a thread in this carb body. So on this side we have a thread. We also need a spacer between the carbs, so I'm going to retract it for a sec, pop that spacer in. There we go. So spacer in, and now we can start threading this in like that. I'm not going to tighten it down just yet, because if it's loose I can still adjust a few things up here. I can tweak some bits like so. So now we can put in the other thingy, the other shaft or connecting bar. So here we go. There we are. So, and now we can pop the nuts on this side. Again, I'm not going to tighten them down just yet. Well, not fully, just hand tight, in case I need to tweak other bits, or in case I forget something, you know. I'm nearly 50, I forget things, sorry. So, these are the carbs assembled. And now we can pop the diaphragms back in place. Now I just have to remember which is which. So this one is the front carburetor. So I need the one with the F there. And while I'm at it, put some of that rubber grease in this groove where the diaphragm lives, because that helps to secure the edge of the rubber. The other thing I'm going to do is replace these little O-rings, which usually go into those ports. Now, of course, you can get them from Suzuki and they are like $3 or something a piece, but these are standard O-rings, and it's a 5.5 outer diameter, 2.5 inner, with a 1.5 thickness, so you can get it anywhere really where they sell you standard sized O-rings. So here we go. I'm going to tuck the lip in like that. I'll grab the other one, which is the one marked with R. That's gonna be for that's the rear carburetors diaphragm or throttle slide. And I put some on the rubber as well, smear it around, and that should be it. And pack, and we are in. Let's get a new one of these 5.5mm OD O-rings. And fits like a glove, as you can see. Like I said, nothing special. 5.5 OD, 1.5 thick. If you want to go by the standard measurements, it's a 2.5 times 1.5. So the ID is 2.5 and the thickness is 1.5. Okay. Theoretically, we're done. We can pop the springs in and we can put the carburetor caps on, but needless to say that is a fairly easy task. I still need to dial in my needle heights, so I'm going to stop here. I just realized I forgot something, the little spring between these bits, the two cams, the connecting linkage. Now here's the spring. I loosened the connecting screws, not completely loose, of course, the nut is still on it. It will give us just enough wiggle room so these don't pop apart, but I can still squeeze this bloody spring in there. So I'm going to start with that end. Come on, zoom in. So with the on the nut side, pop it down there and I squeeze it down here, and I try to move the carbs, wiggle a little bit, wiggle them a bit. Ah, jeez, I'm an idiot, but a creative idiot, because that's back together. So yeah, sorry about that. that spring belongs in there. And we're back together. Right, this time for real. Take care. Bye. On the carb body.